Okay, continuing on, we're going to go ahead and use these two tools, the clone stamp tool and the spot healing brush, and we're going to finish up making this photo look nice. And because of time, I'm going to just talk as I'm going, and I'll try to be as clear and concise as I can so that you know what I'm doing. So right now I can see right here there's a little bit of where the scan was. We didn't quite copy all of it, so I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Option, and I'm going to duplicate right here. So now I have all of that set. The other thing is I'm going to take this area, just kind of duplicate. Now when you go down, what's kind of nice is if you'll click next to it, move your mouse over, and then just drag straight down so that as it goes through a gradient and it looks like it's darker here and kind of goes lighter here, it follows that same look. Same thing here. We'll go ahead and fix these. We've got some other spots right here and a couple more right here. So now we're getting into stuff that isn't as noticeable yet, but it may be as we get ready to do some other color sampling. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to fix his hair. This is going to be a little bit more tricky because there's a part right there, but it's hard to see. So I'm going to make the brush really small, and I'm just going to sample little bits of his hair. And hopefully we leave it just enough that when you look at it, you just automatically your mind would almost draw the part. Because if not, it's going to be really hard to fix. So I'm going through and I'm just taking as close as I can that's similar and duplicating or cloning that area. And now I'm going to clone right in here. There's a little dark spot. Okay, that looks good. I'll clone this. There's a speck right there. I'll go ahead and clone. I'm just holding down the space bar as I do it, and I'm running down the hairline again because that's kind of where it falls. You can see there's also a spot right here that has a little bit of that, and right in here. Those spots off, and then there's one piece right in here. That's looking a lot better. Now we got a couple straggler hairs right here. So I'm going to copy right here and put that there, another straggler hair, and then in between those, because I still want it to look like the picture where there's hair there, so I'm kind of going in between just so that it looks a lot similar to how it should look. Now we're getting somewhere, so we're going to go ahead and run this one down again. And then same thing over here. Remember, I'm holding down Option to get the crosshairs to copy. And then from there, I'm just right there clicking, holding down the mouse and dragging. You might have some areas that need a little bit more work than others, but we're doing pretty good. Now this is really messy right in here. So what we're going to have to do is really be careful on how we sample this. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy little bits at a time. And a lot of this, it's almost like we're redrawing part of this, and so we want it to be as close as we can without making it so obvious that it's not part of the original photo. So I've done that. Now I'm going back to my spot healing brush, and I'm going to make it a lot bigger, and I'm going to turn the hardness down so that it will kind of blur it a little bit, because I need it a little bit blurry to kind of blend this area. So I'm blending this area because I can't have all these spots. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to blend right here. That one was a bad one. So I'll try to blend right here. Now I'm going to go back to the clone, and I'm going to make my brush size a little bigger. I'm going to overdo right there, and I'm going to just kind of follow down. Same thing right here. Now that was a little too big, so I'm going to make my brush size a little bit smaller. Go back again. Make sure that I try to keep it as clean as I can when I'm copying. And that's looking pretty good, but this area is going to be really rough, so I'm going to get in even closer, and I'm going to sample with the clone tool that, and I'm just going to do my best to kind of work down. Now it might not look like I'm moving much, but I'm really trying to bring this stuff in without having it get too messed up. And there's just little bits, so I'm trying to blend the two right now using the clone tool. Now his chin's going to be really white right there, so that's where I'm going to need to use maybe some pieces right in here. And getting closer to what it should look like. Now I'm going to copy up in here because that's a little darker of what I want, without it getting too crazy. And then I'm going to try to just blend. It's still way too light right there, so I'm going to go ahead and use the spot healing brush now to kind of blend it a little bit better. There, that looks a lot better. So now I just have a little piece that I need to fix, which is right in here. And I'll just copy up a little higher, like up in here. Oh, got part of his hair, so I gotta make sure that I'm not taking too much of that. There we go. And like I said, sometimes this stuff can take quite a while, especially if you're really trying to get in there and make it look good. And you'll know as you're working with it. See, this still isn't going to look very good, but it's looking better. But there's white right in here that's a little too light. So I'm going to zoom back in, and I'm going to work on making it a little bit less white. And it's still a little too white, so I'm going to take bits and pieces. That's too dark. So I'm going to take parts right here and see if this will help. Now I'm just sampling this darker part of his chin, and that's not going to do it. So the next thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to go back into the patch tool. What the patch tool will do is it's going to take a source and it's going to try to patch it. So I'm going to take a piece like right here, and you can move around to make it so like you can take different pieces. So now I just barely brought in another piece that it cuts out or samples over here. It's similar to the clone tool, just more with a selection tool. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's still way too light, and so from there I'm going to go ahead and click. And like any project, as you work on it, you just want to take your time so that it doesn't get too messed up. And this is looking a lot better already. It still might be a little light, but it's actually looking a lot more like I would like it to look. There we go. Now it's got his jawline. Might want to bring that in just a little bit. That's looking much better. So I'll go ahead and I'll bring this in for the shadow. Kind of bring that up a little bit, and then we'll run and make the hardness so that there's no hardness, and we'll make the size a lot bigger. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to copy a piece right here. I need to undo that because my cloned a piece I didn't want. There we go. So now I'll go back to the clone tool, make the brush size a little smaller, and that's a lot better. It's a pretty big size right now, so I really want to be careful that I'm not taking too much of that, but I just want it, it's almost like just a little too big, but on the edges of the brush it's kind of pushing it a little bit farther. So this is looking actually really good, and I'll go ahead and bring it down a little bit more. That last piece was a little too dark. Then I'm gonna go back and use the spot healing brush again. This time I'm gonna make it even a lot bigger, and I'm just gonna click a couple times. That one didn't work right, so we'll undo. Make sure that we're sampling the right piece. That one was pretty bad. And just always remember, you haven't totally lost anything if you making a mistake. Okay. And I'm going to undo that one and make it just a little smaller now. So there we go. And he needs his chin a little bit more defined because I took too much of it out. So I'll go ahead and bring a little bit more of his chin in so that we know that that's his chin. There we go. That looks a lot better. Then we'll just do one more little sample right here. A sample right there. That's much better. So now we're starting to get somewhere. If we go back to the original, you can see how much cleaner it is. Now let's say that, for example, his chin looks a little bit deeper right there. So we're going to want to bring it up. The other thing we can do, if for example we really mess up and let's just say it's horrible, I'm going to go ahead and use the eraser tool. Now remember this is another layer, so there's two layers behind here. I'm going to make one more copy of this layer, and I'm going to call this, well, actually I'm just going to call it background 2. And from background 2, I'm going to make sure I'm on the and I'm going to call this layer, let's name it brushed layer. So there, now I know that this is the brush layer and this is the background. So from this layer, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what we can do with the erase tool. So I'm going to erase right here. Actually, I'm going to undo that. I'm on the wrong layer. Need to make sure I'm on the top layer and I erase. So now you can see I just erased where his chin was messed up or wasn't messed up, depending on how you want. Now if I turn these off, you can see I just made a big hole right here. But because this layer is underneath it, it fills in. So now I'm going to go ahead and hold down the command and E, and it will merge the layers, or I'll actually just go to the layer and merge down. And that basically will merge these two layers. So now I have my layer again, and it looks great. So now we're really starting to get somewhere with this photo. There's still a few more things that we need to do, so I'm going to go ahead and get in here close again. Maybe not that close, but close enough. And for time's sake, I'm just going to kind of go fast. Just remember, as you're doing this, you can spend as much time. Now here's a crease. We want to make sure we duplicate that. So I'm going right underneath it, and then I'm going to go up. And then the same thing, I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to go to the edge, and to the edge, and there we go. Now I've taken that out. We'll go ahead and do the same thing here. On any of these wrinkles, you can draw, you can draw all the way around, because it's just going to sample that area. So now I'm going back through, and I'm just sampling again those areas. So I'm going to go through here and here, and I'll take a piece right here as well. And it's looking pretty good. Looks like her neck is beat up a little bit with some damage. So we'll go ahead and fix that. Now I need to go farther out to see. Those are necklaces, so you got to make sure that it's not a crack, but it's an actual, or a crease, but it's an actual necklace. So I'm doing those things, and I'm running right along it, because if I do that, it's gonna be a lot closer and easier to match than trying to take another part of the picture. So it doesn't hurt to stop and hold down the Option and copy again another spot that's closer. And the closer you are to it, then the better off it will be. So you can see I'm starting to add more. That's the necklace. You can always zoom out to make sure. And then there's a big chunk right here in her lower jaw that's kind of missing, so we're going to clean that up. I'm going to take part of her cheek right here. Again, another part of her cheek. And then I'm going to go right here where it's a little closer. A little closer. And what I'm doing is I'm just slowly moving down from where it was. That last one was a little too dark, so I'm going to go right there. And go ahead and fix this area as well. It's part of her chin, and part of her neck, part of the chin again. Just going to keep working on this area. That looks pretty good. It's a little light right there, so I'm going to take a piece from there. That's better. And continue on. And remember, the brush size matters if you're dealing with bigger or smaller cracks. Where this is kind of smaller and you don't really notice too much. But you want to make sure that it's as close as you can to where you're going to be cleaning or doing the restoration. So we're getting closer. And again, this is just real fast. Undo. I'm going to use the spot healing to just try to blend this a little bit better. That's already looking better. So there we go. We'll back it up. And let's see how it looked before. So it's pretty messed up. And now we're getting a lot better. So bring it in again. And again, we're going pretty fast just for this lesson's sake. But if you spend a little bit more time, then you'll see how much better it will turn out. Okay, I'm going back to the spot healing just for a second. And you know what, I'm pretty satisfied, at least right now, with how this looks. So we're getting somewhere. It is a little bit light, a little lighter than I'd want. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I'm out a little farther, I've cleaned up the major cracks. I'm going to take a bigger part of her cheek and clone it. And make sure that the portions that I'm taking can match a little bit better. Because right now, it's off just a little too much. And that left a really light spot. So I'm going to go back here, make the brush size a little smaller again. Trying to see, there's a little bit of a shadow right there, so I want to make sure that I get it, but I don't want to have it so much that it causes issues. And I think the key to that is going to be just a subtle little line. Now I've got some more right here where her cheek is just a little bit different colored, so I'll take it right here. Try to copy it over a little bit more. Oh, that was a little too much. A little too dark right there. I'm going to go ahead and get that spot healing, make the brush size a little bigger, and click again. You can see how just a little bit can make a huge difference. There we go. That looks a lot better. And we'll do one right here as well. Just there we go. That looks much better. So now we're starting to get somewhere with how this looked before and after. If we zoom in a little bit, make it a little bigger, and we turn it off to back on, now we're starting to get where it looks a little bit nicer. So there's just a couple more little things, and then I'm going to show you something on how to adjust some color. Now I'm going to go pretty fast again because, again, I just want to do show you a few tips, and then you guys can play with it. It's more just understanding how the tools work, and then practicing and playing with things, because that's how you get good at anything, is just using the product. Photoshop is a great program, and it's a lot of fun to use, and you can do a lot of things with it, but you gotta put some time in and actually just not be scared to try something without it breaking, so, or feeling like you didn't do a good job. Okay, I'm rambling. I don't even know what's going on here because I can't talk and create at the same time here apparently, but that looks pretty good. So from the beginning to now, not too bad. Last thing I really want to do is talk about some, and please don't forget to save as you're working on this stuff. I'm going to just do some color adjustments. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mess with the levels, and I can hold down the command and hit L, and it'll bring up my levels. You can see that, let me cancel, make sure I'm on the, you can see that I've got my darks right here, so I can make it a little darker. I've got my lights right here, so I can make it lighter, or those are mid-tones really, and then I can make it even super bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make this photo look a little newer by darkening it a little bit and lightening pieces of it, and then the lighter part making, now that's a little too dark. So I want to make sure about right there. There we go. So that is adding a little bit, and you can see as I'm adjusting the colors that the whites and the darks really start to clash if there's specks in this photo. So now we have a darker and now almost more vibrant, and if you look at that, it stands out a lot more. The lights might be just a little too much white, but you've got dark and light, so it makes it that. Now the other thing that I wanted to do, she doesn't look too happy, so let's go ahead and give her a smile real fast. Now the way that you can do that, and this is using a whole nother tool, and I didn't even say I was going to do it, but she just looks sad. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the filters and go to liquify, and I'm going to look at my brush size, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to like maybe 50. That looks good. And the brush pressure, I'll leave it 100. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bigger than 50. I'll do 75. So now my brush is 75, and what this liquify tool does is over here, this will wrap. Basically, it will drag. If I clicked, you can warp stuff. This is how you get funny pictures and stuff like that. So this is one way to do it, and then if you're not happy with what you did, go ahead and click on this and you can wipe over it. Let's see here. I don't know why it didn't update, but I should be able to. Okay, so the pressure needs to be a little higher, but if you click and hold down, it'll move back to where it should be. There we go. Anyway, so she's not super happy to be messed with in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring everything back to how it was. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel it, and we'll load it again by going filter, liquify, and we'll make sure that we're on the warp tool, and I'm just going to drop the brush size to 75, leave it at 100, and then I'm just going to click on the corner of her mouth right here and just move it up just a little, just for fun, just yeah, okay. So you can get carried away with this stuff too, so you want to make sure that as you do it that you're really just kind of because see, now it's kind of messing up everything, and when people smile, their nose kind of changes a little bit, and see, she still doesn't look too happy. So we'll go ahead and wipe over the changes that we made just barely, and I don't want to change too much because she was smiling a little bit. So what I'll do is we'll zoom in a little bit. Whoa, that was a little too much. So I'll click out, and I'm going to go ahead and use the warp tool again. Now I'm going to make the brush size like 25 because I don't want to adjust everything. I just want to make her a little bit more happy. You know, there we go. And then the other thing, sometimes when you smile, your eyes kind of go up a little. Kind of want to make her look a little bit more happy. Go ahead and hit OK. And now you can see she went from sad to a little bit happy. So anyway, this is, you know, maybe in another tutorial I'll show you how, if you guys would like, how to do some fun stuff with Photoshop. The other thing last thing is we're going to go into, just because my mind is on it, let's go into our hue and saturation, and you do that by holding down Command and hit U, and then we can adjust colors. Let's say that we wanted it a little bit more saturated, give it that old school look, or maybe we didn't want it saturated at all and we wanted it really black and white. You could do it that way as well. I'm going to add a little bit to it, and then I'm going to add just enough to make it look a little darker. There we go. So the old one, the new one. And that's how you do photo restoration, or a quick tutorial as far as just quickly messing around with it. So there you go. One other thing, this is a little bonus that we'll do just since you've watched and I put you through all of the shame and my long tutorials, but here's one little fun thing. We'll go ahead and, by the way, if you click on liquefy again from here, it's going to add that effect again. So you don't want to do that. You want to do the liquefy again. We'll go ahead and we're going to mess with them a little bit. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the bloat tool and we're going to make it bigger. That's a little too big. We'll do 100. Let's do 200. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make their eyes, and I'm just clicking and holding, and I'm just right in the center there, so clicking and holding. We'll use the warp tool to really give this guy a smile, and she doesn't want to smile, so we'll make her look a little bit more, you know, alien style. And maybe a skinnier neck. This is how they do it, I'm sure, in the movies, you know. Make the jawline a little bit more. And we'll go ahead and make the nose a little smaller. And I'm using, on this one, I'm using the pucker. So you can see, make his nose a little smaller too, because that's always good. His ears need to be a little smaller. Her ears too, for sure. And right now they're starting to look like caricatures. All right, and let's go ahead and bring his neck out, because he's a guy, he's got to be buff. And his shoulders a little bit bigger. You know, this is those people that take a picture of themselves in the mirror and then they make themselves look all big and strong. Well, there you go. He's got a nice solid chin now. Bring his, now he's looking a little chubby. Here we go. Bring it in, and of course he needs to, that was a little too big. Let's do 500. Of course he needs a big forehead. But we've got to make sure that it doesn't mess with his eyes too much. There we go. Perfect. Now we have a cool picture, a before and after. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. By the way, if you did mess up with this and you didn't want to keep it, you can go ahead and erase it, or you can go into your history, and in the history you can just undo the changes you made, and it'll just be one change. It'll be a liquefy, so you can go right back to the one you had. So you can either have the fun caricature one, or you can do the serious one. But thanks again for watching. I've got another video we'll talk about in going more to web design and web layout using Photoshop.